So I'm here today with Ian Hultquist, who's an arranger and composer and music producer. And Ian and I have been working together for a while now, and want to basically have a conversation with him about some of the things that he's improved in terms of his room monitoring, room acoustics, and so on. So Ian, we first met last year, and I think the first introduction to our products was the PSI AVAA C214s, the active bass traps.
Yes.
Remind me who you'd been speaking to that told you about those. How did you kind of get to
I had been talking with my good friend Chris Sane, who is a renowned producer, album mixer. And I had been in this room for about 2 years, and he had been part of the conversation of that for the whole time, and me constantly struggling to figure out the low-end sound and reproduction here, and just overall just the sound and acoustics and how things should feel. And he constantly said, you should talk to my friend Paul.
So yeah, when I brought the Avas in, I think it was quite interesting because not only the low frequency was really affecting the imaging, the sort of stereo imaging of your monitoring.
Yeah.
I think if you remember, and what was very interesting is that we were sort of playing around. We ended up putting 3 in the front 2 corners and then the rear corner, which I think that rear one was probably the one that was most effective, which was quite odd. But what were the main differences that you really started to notice in terms of the monitoring when we put them in?
Yeah, it was interesting bringing those in for the first time because, one, I had never seen them or heard of them before. So they seemed like these weird magical black tubes that you brought in. And I was very curious to see how they would actually work. But I remember, yeah, as you said, we put them in the front and the back. And immediately I just felt like the vocals that I would listen to in a song just came to life. They were brought forward into the mix. And I realized that because there's not as much low-end treatment in this room as I wish, it was failing the rest of the frequency spectrum, where things like vocals and high-end things were also not coming through as much as they should because the bass was completely unmanaged. So bringing those in on top of the bass tightening up also fixed a lot of higher-end issues that I really needed fixing, which was pretty remarkable.
And then of course, I introduced you to the world of Trinnov as well. So,
yes.
Which, tell me your thoughts on that one.
I feel like me accepting Trinnov was like being dragged through mud a little bit at first, just because I was so staunch on not wanting to buy into the world of digital room correction. I had dabbled with other brands in the past and I've always come away very, very unimpressed and unhappy, and just kind of always was taught, fix the room and then it'll be right. And I do think a lot of that's still true. I do think you should, Trinnov is not gonna fix a bad room, but it's gonna make a good room sound better. So when you did bring in the Trinnov, I was kind of like a little wary at first, but I was like, you know what? I've had more than a few people say, just give it a shot, just try it out. More than a few people who I really, really trust and now have amazing ears have said, it's remarkable, don't want to work without it now. So I said, okay, let's give it a go. And you brought it in, and I think I almost started crying when I first heard it, because it was just, my speakers finally sounded how I thought they should have been sounding for so long. The imaging was so incredible. The low end finally came back to life. And it was like magic. And I became a believer within minutes.
And I think one of the things that you also commented on was just there was an odd imaging thing. I mean, in terms of your core monitoring space before the Trinnov and the Avas, I think in terms of with your previous monitors, you only had to move a very small amount to quite significantly change the sound.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know people say one of the drawbacks that can happen with something like Trinnov or room correction is that you get a really small sweet spot, but I actually had the opposite effect in this room, where the whole room feels like music now. I can be back there by the drums and it still sounds as good as it does up here, which I was really impressed by. Whereas beforehand, with no room correction or anything, I felt like I moved my head this way and it sounds like a completely different mix. I could never narrow down on the mid-range on a lot of things. It was I felt like I was kind of shooting in the dark a lot of the time. where as soon as the Trinnov clicked in with the Avas, it was like this magic combo that just like, it felt like I had basically redone the acoustics in my room with the flick of a switch, which
Brilliant.
was pretty insane.
And then I sowed a seed to you because you always, having enjoyed the AVAAs, you were like, okay, so what else do PSI do then?
Yes.
So, well, they make exceptionally good monitors. So there was, I think you felt there was possibly something wrong with your previous monitoring, just technically. So you wanted to get those fixed. So
Yeah.
I loaned you a pair of 25 and 225. So tell me how that experience.
I'm someone who just, I love audio. I love sound. I think it's fascinating, and I love hearing. I want to hear every speaker. You know, like I'm always curious. So I think that when you mentioned that PSI also happens to make monitors, I already was just, well, I'd be curious to see what they sound like because I want to hear everything. And I've worked with almost all of the big brands that are out there, and they're all great. But I also think that each room kind of requires the right speaker for it. And the brand that I was on before is great, but it wasn't really quite meshing for some reason with the room. I can't tell exactly what it was, but just I always felt, especially with mixing vocals, for instance, I would have to jump like little mix cubes or something to really hear stuff where I felt like I should be getting that from the monitors that I have already. Especially when using Trinnov and the Avas, like I shouldn't be still asking questions with the music. So then you brought these lovely things in there, and I think the first thing that happened right away was I was so struck by how natural and realistic things sounded, especially acoustic drums and the human voice. There was this 3D quality to the voice where it was right in front of me. I could hear around the person's head in a way, but it wasn't doing it in a forced or hyped way that some other speakers do. It really felt real. And when I first heard it, I was like, that's what that's supposed to sound. That's how this record sounded when I first heard it when I was 14 in headphones. Like this, everything kind of came back, and I went through this whole process of rediscovering music that I grew up with, being like, yeah, that's how it sounded. That's why I like this record so much, because it sounds like that, where I feel like I hadn't quite gotten that in a while. And then from there, I think the more I listened on them, the more I worked on them too, I just really got addicted to it. Really, it was just like, it just sounded so good, and I stopped asking questions. And I think for me, as a film composer, I can't be sitting there asking questions about, is the mix right? Is this right? I need to be focusing on getting the emotion across in the music and working on the picture in front of me. And I think taking the question out is like the most valuable thing I can possibly do for myself. So as soon as I figured out how to work with these and with the Trinnov and the Ava, the questions went away, and now I'm just focusing on music. I was very happy.
Brilliant.
Happy camper.
So, I mean, you work both in stereo and in the setup you've got here, which is a 5.1. How do you feel has it changed significantly even with the 5.1 as well? Because you've also got a pair of PSI A21s as your rears.
Yes.
Yeah, have you done much surround mixing since you put all of these speakers in?
I haven't done a ton because I've only been in for a month or so, but I have done a lot of listening to surround mixes. And I think that's what really has shown me how incredible they are. When we first brought these in, I fell in love with these, but I did have different speakers up in the rear. And I kind of just felt like, if these can do what they can do up front, I want that all around me. And once we had the full PSI system running, I was just really impressed by everything I said about those carries over to the back. You know, it's just I felt like I'm in this immersive world of music now when I'm sitting in the middle. And it doesn't feel like there's music necessarily coming from this speaker. It just feels like it's there, it's around me. It's taken the barriers away. Where I feel like a lot of times, I've had a few different setups with different types of speakers as my surrounds. And I just always felt like, oh yeah, I have surround speakers there, and there's this one and this one. I can my brain is pinpointing it in a way that doesn't feel like it's part of a whole.
Yeah.
Whereas now, it's all one cohesive system that's working together, and it's just effortless sound coming out.
You certainly listen to quite a lot of different genres of music. You find that they work with everything, because obviously you do big orchestral stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I've been really impressed by, because I know some speakers might sound great for orchestra, but can totally fall apart with electronic
Yeah.
music or vice versa. And these kind of handle anything you throw at it in a really cool way. I've been really impressed by that. Listening to orchestra on this can make you cry. Listening to like metal music can like make you enraged and crazy. I was listening to a surround mix of a metal song actually, and they'd put like backing vocal screams in the back, which was terrifying, but it sounded incredible at the same time. And electronic music too, like these really put out low end incredibly. I know some speakers really handle low end well, but they also handle it in maybe a different way that, to me, kind of almost felt like they were pushing it too much.
Yeah.
And these just feel, again, like supernatural and real, and have taught me to peel back on low end in my mixes where I might have been pushing too much as well, which is huge, especially for scoring. Like, you don't want to always be pushing the low end, because there's plenty of other sound effects and things that need to go down there. So knowing when to peel back and really focus on other parts of the spectrum is important.
Overall, since all of the corrections and the changes we've made to your monitoring, are there any defining things that have happened in terms of work that you've given people? Have people commented on improvements on the mixes? Are you getting less changes required? Is anything particular happened?
Yeah, I think the revisions have gotten less and less, thankfully. If I do get a revision on something, it's about an arrangement. No, it's not necessarily a mix note, and I think that's huge. It's also helped me hearing back things that other people might be working on that they send me to mix. I can actually hear what they're doing now, and I know how to fix it correctly and much quicker. I feel like the workflow in here has gotten so much faster, and I was already fairly fast. Like, I do like to work quickly, and it's just gone speedy. It's really remarkable because, like I said, I'm not second guessing it anymore. I know what it sounds like. I know what's there is there. I'm not questioning and having to listen on 3 other sets of speakers to make sure I'm hearing it correctly. I just know that it's right. And that's just been fantastic. My setup is running a Lynx Aurora N is my main interface, which I've had a number of different interfaces over the years, and I knew a few people would recommend this one to me. And when I heard it, I just thought it sounded so beautiful and musical and rich, and really kind of blew my former interface out of the water. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, you're never leaving. And then I've been on a Grace monitoring system for a while. I used to have the M905, which is only stereo, but multiple pairs of stereos. And then when I decided to expand this around, I got the M908, which has been a great tool to have in here. And of course, that is then running into the Trinnov Nova, which is my new best friend, and also will never leave the room at this point.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're primarily using the Nova as a room optimization system.
Yes.
You're not currently using the sort of monitor functions because the Grace is doing that for you, which is fine.
Yeah.
So that's one of the beauties of it. It can work in what's kind of understood as black box mode rather than
exactly.
monitor
It's amazing that it can be malleable to your needs. It doesn't just have to be this or this, and I'm able to use it exactly how I need, nothing more, nothing less. And then, if I ever did want to change up my monitoring controller situation, I have the option, which is great.
Sure. So most of the orchestral stuff that you write is done with synths and samples and things?
Yeah, a lot of it ends up being staying in the box samples, which there's a plethora of incredible designers out there that are making really amazing sounding things. But I also do have a few amazing players that I've worked with for years, and whenever I can, I call them up to overdub on things and get actual humans in the mix. I love what I do for a job, but it's also very solitary, and any time I get a chance to work with other people and collaborate, I think it just only makes my work better. And it just makes it more exciting and fun, and makes the music that you're writing a bit more special because there's people involved and it's not just me clicking away at my keyboard.
So your wife also is an artist and a musician?
Yes. Yeah, my wife is Sofia Deli Alessandri, and her artist name is Drum and Lace. She's also a composer in her own right. We've co-composed a number of scores together. She's scored a number of things on her own together. And then she releases music and performs live as Drum and Lace. I get excited when I'm working on music if it's something that really makes me feel emotion, whether it's low end really hitting you hard at a certain point that just kind of like hits at the right point and brings either like a fear to what you're working on or an excitement, or two, when you can really push emotion through in like a really heartfelt, tender way, like really make strings sing, really push a vocal forward and mix and really capture something and make the music feel like it's tactile, you know, not just like there's something in front of you that's happening. Really make it feel like it's grabbing you and you're feeling it internally. I've done a number of films and TV shows over the last few years. Currently, I'm finishing up the first season of Grosse Pointe Garden Society, which is on NBC in the States. I have the second season of The Walking Dead: Dead City coming out this weekend, actually.
Okay.
I have a film called All of You coming out later this year on Apple. And many more things are in the works. But it's been a very lucky past decade or so working in this field with, I'd say, I think almost 70 credits to my name at this point.
Fantastic.
One of the things I love about the studio that I've built here is that I have the option of tons of synths and guitars and drums back there to use if I need them, but a lot of my work also tends to be in the box. And I like that I've set it up in a way now where if I'm working on something that needs a guitar or needs anything, it's there and it's ready to go quickly. With today's working schedules in film and TV, it's usually very quick. And a lot of time you're kind of tied to have to keep things in a computer. But any chance I get to bring live instruments, like I was saying with live musicians, it just makes it more enriching and exciting, especially if you're recording something with a microphone. Just getting air of a room into a mix really kind of brightens things up in a fun way. No one has asked me to mix an Atmos yet. Actually, I've not had to deliver an Atmos just yet, but I feel like the second I land another slightly higher budget film that's going to come into the mix, it's really something I'm tempted by and I'm very curious about. I haven't jumped in just yet. Last year, Expanded 5.1 was the first kind of foray into immersive, but it has been exciting and really fun. And I do think it really, especially for film, it just kind of brings you forward in a new way. Even when I was working on Dead City Season 2, I was delivering my side of the music in stereo, but when I was working on the film, I could send the sound effects track that I was working off of to the stereos. So I have walkers all around me, which kind of makes it for a more fun writing experience because I'm more immersed in the project. And honestly, that alone was kind of worth the investment, just to make it more exciting and cool and like really feel like I'm writing in a almost theatrical setting.
In your setup, you've got a pair of PSI 25s and the 225 subs, which you're using as a full range speaker. In addition to that, you then have another sub for your 5.1 setup.
I am, yeah, because most of my work ends up being in stereo until the very final stage, and I wanted the most full range representation of the music I can get. So having these act as basically like a four-way speaker seemed really enticing to me, and I love it. It's amazing. The sub that's there, it's really for reference, and I don't actually end up using it all that often because these go almost lower than that one on its own anyways, so I get enough oomph just out of these. One thing that I've really appreciated working with you and Emerging has been how responsive and interested you are in any question I've ever had. I know, like any new technology, as soon as a Trinnov was in, I was on my own with it. I immediately had a couple questions, and you guys have been fantastic because within an hour, usually, I get a response back. You've been able to log in remotely and tweak the system whenever I needed it, which is another amazing thing that the Trinnovs can do. But it's always, you've never left me with more questions. You've kind of left me like, oh, okay, I get it now. Thank you. And that's been really nice to see because, you know, there's a lot of different types of customer support out there. And it's always been nice to have one that actually supports the customer when they need it. It's very much appreciated.
Ian, thank you for spending the time and chatting with us today. Really
My pleasure.
appreciate it. I'm very pleased that you're very happy with your room and the monitoring. And roll on Atmos.
Yeah. Thanks for all your help.
No worries.
I'll call you when I'm ready.
Okay.